The rules are what the rules are. These are the guidelines. If you're outside of them, then let the chips fall where they may.
23 ABC pulling back the curtain on what goes on following a BPD officer-involved shooting. Chief Lyle Martin explaining what steps they take to make sure the internal investigation is done correctly and without bias. The last BPD officer-involved shooting a week ago, leaving Christopher Okamoto dead.
Now the officer who fired is on paid administrative leave as the department investigates whether or not the shooting was within department policy, state and federal guidelines. Tonight, we're showing you what BPD investigators look at to determine if the shooting was reasonably objective.
Subject, plan, going through a field, northbound.
Bound through the field, confirm Sam 21.
It's a situation that can unfold in a matter of seconds. A search for a suspect turning into an officer-involved shooting.
Shots fired.
All of a sudden, things are quiet and peaceful, and the next thing, it's very serious and very violent, and people's lives are at stake, sometimes officers and sometimes citizens.
And although officials say the scene of an officer-involved shooting can unfold quickly, what happens after an officer pulls the trigger is a slow and methodical investigation. The results of that investigation is determined by the Critical Incident Review Board. The board is made up of 6 top-ranking officers: the East and West captains, support services captain, investigations captain, and the 2 assistant chiefs. They rule on all critical incidents in the department. Immediately after an officer-involved shooting, an investigation begins. Homicide detectives are called out and Internal Affairs, or IA, is notified, each conducting their own investigation.
Detectives assigned to the investigations division, they are basically investigating to determine whether or not any law violations occurred. Or the administrative side, which is composed of IA detectives or Internal Affairs detectives, they're trying to determine whether or not the shots that were fired were within department policy.
Investigations can take weeks or months depending on how elaborate a scene was or how many officers were involved. Once the investigation is complete, the facts and findings are presented to the Critical Incident Review Board. Details include the officer's name, how long they've been with the department, any previous officer-involved shootings, and more. IA detectives then give all the facts the officer knew in chronological order leading up to the shooting. Officials say the presentation can include crime scene images, aerial images, PowerPoint presentations, radio traffic,
Start medical aid, 1 down.
and officer and witness statements. Once all of those are presented, the board considers all factors of the shooting to determine if it was within federal guidelines, state guidelines, and department guidelines. According to officials, the police department's guidelines are the most narrow. State guidelines are more broad, and federal guidelines are the most broad.
Yeah, officers have to be able to account and justify every round or account for every round that they fired. You can have some shots that are within policy and some shots that are not within policy.
The board has to be unanimous in their decision. Once they are, they make a recommendation to the chief about whether or not it was within department policy, and the chief has the final say. From 2015 to now, the Bakersfield Police Department has had 23 officer-involved shootings, 3 this year. 20 of those have been ruled within department policy and state and federal guidelines. 3 remain under investigation.
Was the force reasonably objective under the totality of the circumstances? And that's the criteria for if officers use force appropriately.
In the history of BPD, 3 officer-involved shootings have been ruled outside of department policy. They happened in 1998, 2004, and 2006.
So we go out of our way to make sure that there are no conflicts of interest.
The practice of BPD making decisions on critical incidents involving their own officers has been criticized over the years, but Chief Lyle Martin says he's not out to try to change people's minds about the process.
If you've got your mind made up, it doesn't matter what I tell you. It doesn't matter who looks at it. It doesn't matter who reviews it. It's still not justified.
He says he and the department do everything in their power to ensure the review process is fair.
It's critical that we get it right. And I'm not going to sit here and jeopardize my reputation, my career, my credibility within my community for anybody.
The Bakersfield Police Department wants the public to know exactly what their use of force policy actually is, so you can read it in full right now at turnto23.com.
Turning now to new developments in the